The sun was sinking low over Durham Ridge, painting the whole desert in shades of burning orange as the wind tossed dust. Across the empty streets and into this forgotten town stepped a widow named Lena, a quiet woman with a dark dress, a tired heart, and a suitcase that held the last pieces of a life she wanted to escape. People stared at her the moment she got off the stagecoach. Across from her cabin stretched a massive ranch owned by Jax Carter, the most feared man in the region, a rancher known for his fists, his temper, and the way he could stare someone into silence without saying a single word. Elena noticed him watching her from horseback, his eyes sharp and unreadable. But instead of looking away like everyone else did, she simply nodded politely and kept walking, a tiny act of confidence that somehow irritated him more than anything. When she started fixing a broken fence post outside her cabin later that evening, he approached her with that irritated scowl, telling her the land was his, the fence was shared, and strangers weren't welcome to touch anything around here. But she just looked at him calmly and said she didn't come here to be liked, which stunned him because people in Durham Ridge either feared him or desperately tried to win his approval. Never this. At night time, inside the cabin, Elena sat at a small wooden table, staring at the letter she'd refused to open since her husband's death, the paper heavy with secrets she wasn't ready to face. Not when she heard shouts outside, then the crack of a gunshot. She rushed to the window and saw Jax Carter, surrounded by 3 masked men fighting to steal his horses or maybe kill him. She couldn't tell, but he was outnumbered and struggling. She didn't know him, didn't trust him, didn't even like him, but something inside her moved, a memory of losing someone she loved and not being able to stop it. So she grabbed an oil lantern and ran outside. Without thinking, she threw the lantern near the attackers. The small explosion of fire, startling them long enough for Jax to recover and fight back with brutal strength, knocking one unconscious and sending another fleeing into the night, until the last man broke and ran past Elena with panic in his eyes. When the fight ended, Jax stared at her in disbelief. Chest heaving, Elena simply said she couldn't watch someone die. Again, he walked her back to her cabin and muttered that she should have stayed inside. But she only responded with a quiet, stubborn "you're welcome," which again threw him off balance. Only now, something else pressed with it, a new fear, a new curiosity, something she didn't want to name. With trembling fingers, she picked up her husband's letter at last, because tonight's violence reminded her that running forever wasn't possible. She opened it slowly, bracing herself for the truth she had avoided. Her husband's final words weren't love or goodbye. They were a confession that the men who attacked Jax tonight were the same men coming for her. The next morning felt weirdly quiet, like the whole land was holding its breath. The widow woke up before sunrise because something kept bothering her. Something about the way the rancher looked last night, the way the shadows moved, the way the wind felt heavier. She swept the floor like she did every single morning. But today her broom hit something solid under the loose board. At first she thought it was nothing, but the sound was too sharp. So she pulled the board up and found a small, half-burned envelope hiding underneath. Her heart flipped. The paper smelled like smoke and old secrets, and the name on the front made her freeze completely. It was her husband's name. Meanwhile, outside, the rancher was fixing the fence, pretending to be calm, but his eyes kept darting around like he expected someone to walk out of the dust any second. His horse stayed restless too, ears twitching, tail flicking, like it sensed danger before humans could. When the widow stepped out with the burnt letter in her hand, he looked at it once, and his whole body went stiff. He recognized it. She could tell instantly. They didn't talk about it right away. She made breakfast. He tried to act normal, but the silence between them felt thick enough to choke on. Finally, she placed the letter on the table and asked quietly, "How long were you planning to hide this from me?" And the rancher didn't lie this time. His jaw tightened, his eyes softened with something like guilt, and he told her the truth. Her husband didn't die in some ordinary accident. He was involved with a dangerous outlaw crew, the same crew now circling the area like vultures. But the rancher didn't stop there. He admitted he used to ride with them, years ago, before he knew what they really were, before he tried to leave. And nobody leaves an outlaw gang without consequences, the widow felt like. The floor dropped under her. The grief she'd been carrying for so long twisted into something sharp and angry. But at the same time, she finally understood why the rancher stayed to protect her, why he didn't sleep properly, why he kept watching the hills. He wasn't just guarding her, he was waiting for ghosts. The rest of the day passed slowly. When the sun set, they sat outside near an old oak tree. The wind was soft, and the sky was orange. And for the first time, the widow saw the rancher not as a stranger or protector, but as a man who'd been fighting all his life. A man trying to fix something he'd broken long ago. At night, the rancher left the house quietly. The widow followed him from a distance, confused. He walked into the woods until he reached a clearing lit by a single lantern. A masked man stepped forward from the shadows and whispered something urgent. The rancher grabbed his collar and demanded answers. Something terrible was coming. By dawn, riders appeared on a distant hill, staring down at the ranch like wolves deciding when to attack. The widow felt the dread instantly. The rider didn't slow. His horse tore through the dust, shaking the ground beneath the widow's feet. She backed toward the porch, gripping the burnt letter as fear crawled up her spine. For a moment she thought an outlaw had returned, but when the rider came close, she saw a pale, exhausted boy no older than 19. He slid off the horse and nearly collapsed into her arms. His clothes were torn, blood smeared on his sleeve. "Ma'am," he rasped, barely breathing. "They're coming. They're not waiting till night." Her pulse kicked. "Who?" "The ones after him, the rancher. They know he's here. They know you have what they want." Before she could ask more, the boy fainted. She dragged him inside, her mind racing. The rancher still wasn't back, and something felt terribly wrong. Moments later, slow footsteps approached. She seized a lantern as the door creaked open. The rancher stepped in, bruised, coat-ripped, eyes burning with anger and fear. "They've split up," he said. "Half are riding here. The others wait on the ridge." She pointed at the boy. "He warned us." The rancher knelt beside him, jaw tight. "He's the youngest in their gang. He must have run." Then he looked at her with guilt carved deep in his face. "I should have told you the truth. I shouldn't have brought this trouble to your home." She met his gaze without flinching. "It's here now. So we fight." Gunfire cracked across the hills. The boy jolted awake, screaming. The rancher barricaded the door and tossed her a gun. She hesitated only once before gripping it firmly. "Stay behind me," he said. "No," she answered. "We do this together." Hooves thundered outside. Shouts rose. Shadows moved through the trees. The outlaws had arrived. The rancher braced by the window. The widow stood beside him. The boy hid beneath the table. Outside, armed men approached like wolves. One outlaw tapped his gun on the fence. "We know you're in there," he called. "Give us what we want and maybe we'll bury you in one piece." The rancher didn't move. The widow didn't blink. "Suit yourself," the outlaw sneered. He raised his rifle. The rancher whispered, "Get ready." A bullet slammed into the porch. The window shattered, and chaos erupted. Gunfire ripped through the morning. Bullets tore into the ranch house, splintering wood. The widow dropped behind the overturned table, heart racing. The rancher leaned out the broken window, firing with deadly precision. Every shot echoed across the fields, mixing with the screams of outlaws and panicked horses. The boy under the table trembled violently. The widow grabbed his hand. "Stay with me," she whispered. Dust swirled as outlaws circled the ranch, firing blindly. Then silence. A faint click, a fuse. "Get down!" she screamed. The explosion blew the back window wide open, throwing them to the floor. Smoke and flames filled the house. The boy coughed, crawling away from the fire. 3 outlaws climbed in. The widow fired blindly, hitting one. The rancher tackled another. The third aimed at the widow, but the boy threw himself at the man's legs. The rancher pulled her aside and fired, hitting him square in the chest. Flames licked the walls. "We have to get out!" The rancher coughed, pulling the boy up. Bullets flew from the hills. 2 riders charged them. The rancher shoved the widow behind a broken wagon, dropping one rider with precise shots. The second grabbed her by the hair, gun to her head. "Give me the letter," he snarled. The widow, shaking, tore the burnt letter in half. "Go pick it up," she spat. The outlaw lunged for the scraps, just in time for the rancher to tackle him. 2 shots rang out. The outlaw went still. The remaining outlaws fled. Smoke and ash filled the air, the ranch half destroyed. The boy knelt beside them. "Is he gonna die?" "Not today," the rancher said. The widow helped him sit, leaning against her. The sun rose, painting the sky gold and pink. "I'm sorry for bringing this here," the rancher whispered. "You didn't," she said softly. "Trouble was already looking for me." He laughed weakly. "What now?" "Now," she said, "we rebuild." And together they walked back to the half-burned home. 3 survivors, alive, bound by fire, ready to face the future.